Hello and welcome to another Game Nexus arcade video. Today we're going to be taking a look at Jambo Safari, released in 1999 on the Sega Naomi arcade hardware. Now, there's not too much to really go through in the test mode here. If you go into the game test mode, it's just going to have like your standard stuff. And of course, since this game uses a steering wheel and pedals, it's very important to go into the input test, and then you can go in here and see that your lever up and down, which is actually the same lever up and down for initial D, but I believe it actually reversed, and then your accelerator and your brake, and of course your steering wheel, and most importantly your start button. This one here. Yeah, there it is. Start button. But that's all there is to the controls. As I said, very important in a game like this. Game assignments, there's nothing really all that crazy. If we go into here, you'll just see difficulty, cabinet type, motor type, which, nicely enough, I don't know if it has something to do with my OpenJVS setup or what, but it doesn't really bother me that I don't have the motor drive on, so it works just fine. And yeah, that's really all there is to that. And let's go ahead and get out of this. And once it gets out of here, we're going to get into this and take a look at a little bit of Jambo Safari on the Sega Naomi hardware. And just a quick little thing while it's doing its like little loading thing, you'll see here's our Naomi with the Jambo Safari cartridge. And of course, I am running the OpenJVS arcade cabinet, and then just my Mad Catz MC2 racing wheel for Xbox 360. And it's got to go through its like big loading break for all the loading stuff, and then it'll get us right into the game. Oh, okay, and as I was saying, you'll see it has to load like its polygon texture, sprite data, and everything. It gives this warning that you shouldn't go crazy and go and capture animals yourself, or you could be having a violation of like the law. But there are 4 different Safari people here. Honestly, in playing this game, I've not seen a difference in how they play or anything, or the mechanics changing at all, like somebody being a stronger driver or a stronger like rope puller. But this is basically the beginner mode that gives you like your tutorial. If you needed a bit more than the how to play in the intro there. The general gameplay loop in this game is basically, in the arcade version at least, you have a steering wheel and pedals and a shifter like Initial D. The shifter basically operates the lasso, and pushing it down and up makes sure lasso be thrown or your net be thrown when you already have the animal lassoed. And then, of course, pulling down on it, I believe, pulls the rope, and then pushing up on the shifter, I believe, will then throw the net. And if you see when I'm doing some of these, catching some of these animals, it'll have like a little target thing, which actually makes me think a little bit of Virtual Cop. But, and when it does that little target thing where it's got like the little circle inside, that's doing the net part basically to net the animal. And the good part about the tutorial part is it's actually pretty easy. Although I remember when I first played this, I had a lot of difficulty. And it's just one of those games that once you get the gameplay loop down, it's not that bad, but initially it kind of feels a bit hard or a bit clunky. Now, the way that this game worked is the game was initially developed back in 1999 for Sega Naomi in arcades only. They, just like I had mentioned in my Brave Firefighters video, they were going to release Sega's Real Life Careers series. I've also heard of it called Real Life Heroes series, with Brave Firefighters, Emergency Call Ambulance, which is sadly a game I still don't own that I really want to play, and Jambo Safari. but that never ended up actually happening. So, unfortunately, these 3 quote-unquote real-life careers games never got a console version. And as you can see there, I completed the initial training, which you just had to capture 3 animals. And then the final training here is to capture a cheetah, which I remember, I think it was this actual stage when I first played it. I got it done right away, and I was like, why was that so hard? Now, I think it was the first time I tried this, I had trouble catching up with the cheetah, and then eventually I was able to do it after my, like, second try, I think. But the game kind of psychs you out, making you think you have to sprint to catch up with the cheetah, but you really don't. It's a little bit faster than some of the docile animals that you were able to do in the initial tutorial, but it's not as bad. They just kind of, hype it up and overhype it a bit, but that was basically the beginner mode, and then it kind of shows you what the rest of the game has. Now, I never actually communicated with the people when I played this game, so I don't know what that's all about. Because I could remember when you use the steering wheel and select what animal you want, it actually shows the village as an option, and you'll see you'll only get a ranking in the expert mode, which it's kind of silly to call it expert mode. It should be like training and like real gameplay mode, but I guess they figured expert mode was kind of a better idea. But here we are back again. We're going to go into this expert mode, which doesn't give you instructions. And what I'm going to do is select the same guy here. He was my lucky charm in this, because another thing that was kind of weird, I don't know if it was something to do with how the game handles its motor board or something. I tried changing the game to standard cabinet, but it seems to make no difference. But at random times, the game would just simply crash, and I was assuming it was my Naomi overheating, so I actually completely took it apart, dusted all the fans and everything, and no matter what I did, I still had this happen. So I actually slapped the cartridge into my Naomi 2 system, and this gameplay was actually running on my Naomi 2 system, which, if you know anything about Naomi and Naomi 2, the way that worked is that Naomi 2 is basically just double Naomi. So basically it has 2 CPUs and 2 GPUs, and when you run a regular Naomi game in it, it just shuts half of the system off to quote-unquote run the legacy support for the original games. But I somehow, luckily, as you're seeing today, got through a whole gameplay loop of this game, because I just wanted to show what this game looks like. Because even though, well, I'll discuss that in just a minute, the Wii version came out like years after this, like 10 years after this, it's not really the same game. So I figured it'd be nice to show what this game looks like when it runs on its original hardware, how the gameplay actually runs on the Naomi, more the Dreamcast based system. But the short and long of this is, as I was saying, this game got released in 1999 on the Sega Naomi hardware, and it wasn't until November 17th of 2009, a whole 10 years later, that they released the Nintendo Wii and the Nintendo DS Jambo Safari Animal Rescue games. Now, the way I could describe those games, because I actually, before making this commentary right now for you, I went through like a bunch of YouTube videos and just looked at to see how that game looked, how it played, the general gameplay loop, how they've changed it a little bit. But the short and the long of it is, in this game, the graphics have more of that, like, I would say quote-unquote realistic / Dreamcast type look, whereas when they released Animal Rescue, it's more of like a cel-shaded cartoony look. it's not really cel shaded, but the graphics are a little bit smoother, but a little less realistic in my opinion. And the way that the gameplay is handled on the Wii is that instead of it being like rooted as a like Initial D replacement type driving game, because the thing is, this arcade version is driving game first, catching animals second, whereas the Wii version kind of changes it a bit different. And at some point I'm going to have to play the Wii version and see how the gameplay like translates to that, but the general gist of how the controls work on the Wii is like your A button and B button control your braking and your gas, so you completely lose analog controls for driving. And then your nunchucks joystick is the steering, and then somehow the motion controls for your Wiimote let you lasso the animals. It's probably one of those things that ends up working a lot better than it sounds like it would, but it kind of sounds like a convoluted control scheme to me, if you ask me. But as I said, that's going to have to be one of those things I will have to try. Although what's kind of cool is they do have a co-op mode where one person drives and one person lassos, so that actually sounds kind of cool. And it would have been cool if the arcade version did that and there was like linked cabinets that would allow that, but it's kind of beyond the scope of an arcade game would be that you'd have a co-op like that. But yeah, one thing I have to say is Jambo Safari is kind of one of those games that you go into it expecting one thing, but you kind of come out of it and get a different thing. So it kind of feels like very arcadey, and it's just crazy when you're getting pulled by an animal like this and your Jeep is like flipping over and everything. And apparently in either the Wii or the DS or both versions they got a Land Rover license for some reason, because I guess they needed money to make the game. I think I ended up picking up the Wii version at GameStop for like $1 or $2 or something. And the good part about the arcade version, except for certain challenges where you can't continue, like the final boss after this stage that I'm playing now, where it's like a saber-toothed tiger, you can continue as much as you want, but the boss battle, which as I said is that saber-toothed tiger, is kind of a one and done, so if you don't do it, you're pretty much done. But as I was saying, getting back to the console loop, other than this general gameplay that you see here that you're playing with just getting the animals, which I don't know if it's in this gameplay or if it's just in some of my other failed gameplays, but what I was going to say was there are several times where I actually don't get animals and I actually have to go to a different animal, because in this part, just like the first part you saw there, you have to catch 4 animals here, 3 animals there, and they have to be different animals. Although, I learned in another gameplay that if you capture a male antelope and a female antelope, that counts as 2. But if it's 2 male antelopes, I guess they don't count it. But as I was saying, other than this general gameplay loop in the Wii version, there's also some other stuff like grooming the animals and brushing their teeth and whatnot. From what I understand, they kind of tried to lean on the educational value of teaching kids about animals and stuff, and they tried to add a few extra bits to the game just to make it seem a bit more of a fleshed out experience, because unfortunately what you see me play today is kind of the whole gameplay of the arcade version, and it does kind of feel like one of those like quarter muncher games, because a lot of the animals will run a lot and you generally have to go after them. But as I said, the one big thing that kind of confused me a little, I thought that each of the characters would kind of have their skills. Like one character could pull the lasso harder, one character would be a better driver, so you would drive faster or you would drive better. But I played as like that initial ranger guy, the girl, this African American dude. Well, technically he's not African American, he's Kenyan. So, and then there's the old dude as the last character. But none of them seem to play different, which personally I see as a missed opportunity, because they could have easily taken any of these characters and just given them a bit of different stats, like a la Crazy Taxi, if you will. Oh, and another thing I noticed in some of the gameplays for the console version is they give you some extra missions that the arcade version wouldn't have. Because I saw a thing where it was like, oh, there's some hyenas on the plains, and they need to be, you need to get one of those so we can take a look at it. So could you go find one for me? So it seems kind of cool that you would have extra missions, and it would kind of vary the gameplay loop a bit. But, and you'll see there when I was actually going through the animals, as I'd mentioned earlier, it shows the village. So I guess the locals would tell you something about some of the animals. So in future gameplays, when I play more of this, I'm going to have to explore that a bit more. But basically, I just wanted a general gameplay to show you how the whole gameplay loop of Jambo Safari looks in the arcade version, which, unfortunately, as I was trying to make mention of, this version of the game never received any kind of console ports, because more or less the Wii version is kind of a remake from the ground up. It's not the same game in any way. And as you can see there, it is very easy to get a rope break, because you think that you're doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden the animal just pulls too hard and you are you just lose it. But another thing I was gonna say is, one of the things that I kind of noticed when I was playing the game, especially with like elephants and lions, people who don't like the cruel treatment of animals might not like this game, because especially when they're trying to get away, you kind of feel like you're hurting the animals, but you know, it's just a game, so there's no animals really involved at all. But that's one way I could see this game wouldn't like quite fly today, because people would be like, oh, you're hurting the animals and they don't want to be caught by you. But you know, it's just a game, so just play the game and have fun. But general short and the long of this game is it's a really arcadey experience. It's very different from anything I had played. And now one thing I want to make mention of this stage in general is, before this particular gameplay, I legit never lassoed the saber-tooth tiger, and he would always just run away and then like run around in circles around the camera, and I would never be able to get him no matter what I did. So maybe this gameplay I legit just got lucky, but I was very happy to finally do this, and I was thinking there was going to be tons of stages after this, but yeah, that's actually just it. Maybe if you consult the locals, there'll be different animals you can get, because it looks like there was like a dinosaur in the intro, or no, in the after the tutorial stage, it shows like a dinosaur at the end. But maybe that's kind of a, if you consult the locals, you get to find more animals. But yeah, I definitely have to say, Jambo Safari is kind of one of those games that I went into it thinking a certain thing, and I kind of got out of it, and it's like a really nice arcadey experience, much different from anything I'd ever played before. I would imagine the Wii version will give you a similar gameplay loop and a bit more of a fleshed out content than this fairly simple cartridge-based Naomi entry in the series. Well, I can't really call it a series, since it basically has this original arcade version and then the 2009, what I would actually like to call a remake more than a port, because when they completely redid the graphics and the gameplay loop and they added like so much to it, it's not really a sequel, it's not really a port, it's more or less just like a remake of this game that you're seeing right here. But considering this is 1999, at this point in making this video, that's like 27 years ago. Considering technology at the time, this game actually looks and plays really good, and I would honestly recommend, if you can find it in the wild, give a try to this arcade version, because it actually is pretty fun. And it's definitely different than, like, say, your Initial D or your Virtual Fighter or Virtual Cop or any game that you would play in the arcades. This game has a very fairly unique feeling gameplay loop, and one thing I will say is don't get discouraged if you try this game, because it takes a bit to get used to. It's not one of those games that you're going to pick up, you're going to drive as fast as you possibly can and win the race in like 2 seconds. It'll take a bit of finesse to like kind of get there. But yeah, definitely a game to try. And this has been another Game Nexus arcade video, and I shall see you later. Bye.